I see so many business podcasts stop after like 5, 10, 12 shows. They go, oh, well, we're only getting 20 downloads a show. This is a failure. We should stop. Let's talk about what's good and what's bad when it comes to download numbers. Okay. Let me give you an example of what I've experienced, or one of the key experiences for me. One of the very first shows I ever put together was in the pop culture space. More specifically, it was the nerd pop culture space. And I probably don't have to tell you that even in 2013, when this was taking place, that there were tons of shows like that out there. Tons. I mean, you want to talk about, oh my gosh, are we going to stand out? But I developed a really creative format that was part story. It had music, sound effects. The co-host all had lines and things, and that would lead into our discussions. It was very unique in how we approached it, but it was all about standing out at that point. And after about a year, we had about 100 downloads per show. And by the way, that's the number you want to focus on. Downloads per episode. I see all these folks talking about downloads per month and stuff like that. Your most important stat is downloads per episode. So we had about 100 after a year. And I went to a podcast conference, and I remember asking one of my favorite experts at the time, okay, hey, we built this. We got 100 downloads per show right now. How long, if we wanted to set a goal and say, you know what, we want to double that number, how long do you think that would take? And he said, probably another year. And I went, that was not really what I wanted to hear. But 6 months later, we were pushing about 5 to 6 to 700 downloads per show. I mean, someone can tell us what to expect, but just the dedication to keep going went a long way. It wasn't long, and we were eventually pulling about 1,000 downloads per show. I remember going to one of those conferences, and Cliff Ravenscraft was one of the speakers, and you might have heard of him if you've been following podcast thought leadership over the years. And he talked about this very thing. He said, I get all these emails all the time about, hey, Cliff, I'm only getting 300 downloads per show. I'm freaked out about this. We've got to grow. What do we do? And while he said he's always willing to help and give suggestions and things of that nature, he said, the thing that I was really kind of bothered by is this phrase, only 300 downloads per show. He said, because if you look in this room, and we were in a big room at this conference, and if you were to say, this is 300 people, when you actually visualize that, that's a lot of people. So 300 is nothing to, sneeze at here. And really what's important, whether it's 30 or 300, is there's just something that should be valuable to you, that many people are taking time out of their day to listen to what you're putting out into the internet, into the digital ecosystem. You talk to people who subscribe to these shows, and yes, this includes even business shows, especially those that are putting a lot of effort into making that connection with the listener. They say it means everything to hear that show every Tuesday or every other Wednesday. When I'm jogging, they're just fun people to hang around, or I learn something, or I'm on a long commute, and when I know I can listen to them talk and talk about my industry or things I'm interested in, that just makes my commute better. You never really know in that group, no matter how big it is, the impact you're really having. And here's the other thing that's really important for you to remember. If you can have a good focused group of people that you grow over time, that, it's not massive, but it's people, and they all love what you're doing, there's huge value to that, because it's not just about the download. They're going and telling their friends about your show and their colleagues and others. I mean, people love to say, I heard on a podcast last week, this, that, and the other. And then that person goes to check it out, or that person knows what your business does and goes, hey, you have that problem? I listen to this podcast and these folks really know their stuff. You should check them out. I mean, that's 1 out of 20 people, 2 people out of 30 people. That's still really, really valuable. And that's what you really should think about. And the truth of the matter is that if you spend more time focusing on quality and content for the people who are listening to you right now, that's going to help take care of the growth on its own, because you can get so distracted and so distraught by, oh my gosh, we don't have these people following us and our numbers are like this and we don't like it, or like that and we don't like it. when really, if you're focusing on the people that are listening to you now, you'd be amazed at how that focus can go a long way. Because that's what we did when I built that show in the pop culture space. There's nothing wrong with you launching a show and you start out with 15 or 20 or whatever, this low number. What you have to start paying attention to over time is that first 24 hours and that first week. Are there patterns starting to show up after like the first 8 to 12 months? Like within the first 24 hours, do you instantly see X amount of people constantly checking in? Or do you suddenly start seeing the same numbers per episode after the first week? You may see 20, 30, 35, 22, but that means somewhere in there, that's probably 20 subscribers. So there's patterns. And the thing that I've always remembered is even when my audience was small, I could make the logical conclusion of, well, if there are 20 people here in the early days of the podcast that have decided to subscribe to this show, that means there's 20 more out there. So now I have to work to see if I can reach them. It's not like if we're floating around 15, 20 downloads per show in the early going, we've plateaued, because the world's too big. And again, as I've talked about in previous videos, there are people out there looking for depth. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with making tweaks and trying to improve your craft and do some things different along the way. We always need to keep learning. But as long as that learning is about how can I continue to produce the show and provide value to my audience and what they need from a podcast, you're going to be fine when it comes to downloads.